Boom.
Woo! Welcome to the TForce LCS rundown for this week, the pre-week to the summer LCS split. I am Mott Ganorum, your host, joining you every week but the previous week and a couple of weeks before then. Joined this week by Optimus Tom.
Who is not working this week, so I get to be here for the 1 minute late show start.
Ow, ow! No, we started on time.
Not according to my clock.
Time enough.
Greg Credible Mushroom.
Hello.
And this week, subbing out for a cereal box, we have a Dom Nom 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 from the TForce LCS podcast.
Yeah, so I heard that you guys needed somebody to come on and, be that drunk analytical guy and everything. I thought, well, I can get drunk. I can do that.
Well,
So,
we can't have opinions here, so we might as well bring in analysis.
I didn't say anything about analysis. I'm not gonna do that. No good at that. I'm just gonna get drunk.
We could have just gotten Pwn and been fine with that.
Yeah, pretty much.
And that's what you should have done. You're settling for second best here.
I feel like if we were going to have Adam on the show, I would have needed to start drinking at like 6 o'clock Eastern and work my way up to the show just to get onto his tier, just to get onto his level. But unfortunately, I am just almost through my first Sam Adams Whitewater IPA for the night.
There was no getting on Adam's level this weekend. He's been so busy with GG Chronicle stuff. He and I are both just like hitting the bottle as hard as we can because it's the only thing keeping us sane here.
Well, if you'd like to send us lots of encouraging emails of how terrible we are or how fantastic we are, we absolutely love it. And we are receiving all feedback at trinityforcepodcast.com. We are streaming live every Sunday night shortly after 9 p.m., some nights shorter than others, after 9 p.m. Eastern Time, at Twitch TV/TForce Podcast. I always forget if that's Trinity Force or TForce. And then, of course, you can find us on lcs.thetrinityforcepodcast.com. And don't forget to leave us a review on iTunes and stuff. We got to work on that introduction. We don't have the groove. We don't have the T-Force podcast groove. It's been a while.
All we need is a rapping theme song.
Can we get a rapping theme song? If Adam would send me the show audio like I want to, I'll put together some cool compilation stuff.
In your defense.
In my defense.
You haven't done 160 some odd episodes, so
Very
you got
true.
time. You got time
Very
to
true.
develop the flavor for it.
Yeah, we're only on episode 12, and we're already begging for different little audio things. Why not? I'm still waiting on Twitter graphic assets. It's just a picture of me looking at the camera with these stupid big headphones on. I need to get new headphones. I don't look as good as you guys. Yeah, see, it's so low profile. It's so nice. So how's everybody's weeks? We weren't even here last week. I was dead. It was Mother's Day last Sunday, and my grandmother's house, they have a dog, and Bridget's, my girlfriend's grandparents' house, they have a dog, and I'm allergic to dogs, so my eyes were completely puffed red. I couldn't breathe, and I couldn't say 2 sentences without sneezing, and that would have been terrible for a show.
Unacceptable.
So, yeah.
You should have shown up, son. You needed to be here.
Some podcast hosts can't say more than 2 sentences without slurring, and they still host podcasts.
Yo.
Wow. So how's everybody's week's been? Optimus Tom, you've been so absent in my life.
I've been everywhere. Well, first, I missed the first week I was gone because I got to do Lone Star Clash, which was a ton of fun. Team 8, a challenger team, wound up winning and then subsequently got knocked out in the play-in for the Coke Series.
Yeah, what the hell happened there?
I have no idea. They had a new team came in and just beat them up. Maybe they underestimated them. Maybe, I don't know. But they didn't succeed at all. So that was no fun for them. But Lone Star Clash was a blast. And then immediately after that, I flew back home for 12 hours and then flew back out to LA. And then I was living on Paris time working the All-Star event over there. So that was a lot of fun. Of course, you guys have probably seen All-Star and probably saw what happened over there. It was really weird, though, waking up at like 10:30 at night and going to bed at 1 in the afternoon. Don't recommend it if you don't have to do it.
Yeah, that's not a lot of fun. Because there's the recoup time of you trying to get onto that time zone, and then the cooldown time, we'll even call it, when you're trying to get back to a normal person's schedule. It's terrible. I did a whole summer working overnight shifts, and I would get into work at 10 p.m. and get home at 6 a.m., and it was just the worst.
I used to start work at 3 p.m. and get done at 11, and even that was a weird enough schedule.
Second shift is not anybody's friend.
Mm-mm.
Not anybody's friend. I just got an email from Adam with the show files. Hi, Adam.
Nice.
Oh, man. So, Greg, how are you? How's the week's been treating you?
Not too bad, not too bad. Been playing a lot of Eve. When I have been doing League, I've been trying to break into Gold 4. It's my current challenge. But I'm very excited about Braum. I bought him pretty much day one and tried playing him all over the place. Yeah, that stash is a life shaver.
Yeah. Oh, there we go.
How long were you saving that one?
I must ask you a question.
That's so good.
Which is not his taunt, but you know what? His best thing is some of his taunts, where he just like lays on his back and he kicks the door in like this big circle over and over, or he'll do one-handed push-ups.
I haven't even done those now that I think about it. What the hell? I've been doing it wrong.
So good.
I've noticed
he play the character.
Max disrespect.
I've noticed he has a lot of interactions with items. Certain items you buy, he says different stuff.
He's really strong, I think. I can't wait to see him in the LCS.
Ooh, that would be interesting. Because the thing is it's obviously going to have to break up the mold a little bit of the Thresh picker ban, but I guess we'll see. I love it when they bring in new supports, because supports are so often support or nothing champions. Like you could play them in other places, but they're kind of pinned to that one role. So it's fun to see people adopt them. And you get that like week of solo queue where support gets picked, and it's a ton of fun. And you can do all the other things you ever wanted to.
I feel like Lulu and Soraka disagree with you vehemently.
There's obviously exceptions to the rule, but there are some like Leona and Thresh. What other lanes are you going to actually pick them in and not have some sort of
You are asking the wrong person.
Fun? Is it jungle that you would run Leona
if your name is Nintendo X, you're going to pick him pick Leona in the jungle.
I play mid Thresh. I play jungle Leona, top Leona, mid Leona. She's really pretty much good everywhere. Let's be real. I played my first Braum support game was with a AD Leona, and that lane is horrific.
I can see that being stupid, actually.
It's so OP.
It's a total cheese strategy. I mean, I played Jarvan Wukong for the longest time, and that was stupid. That was first blood every single time and guaranteed 2 more kills. Then you run and hide behind your turret until mid-game, and then you just destroy and roam the map.
Well, Leo's Q is an auto-attack reset.
Right.
So you do Braum's passive for 1 hit. Leona hits auto-attack, Q, and then another auto-attack, and you're basically perma-stunning the dude.
Wow.
Oh, and then root the guy on the way out. Just because.
The problem with Braum is his power is so heavy in his passive that the biggest support pick right now is Morgana, and it completely stomps him. Completely shuts him down.
Will the spell shield block?
Yes.
Wow.
That's pretty much your best bet, but picking Leona or Thresh into him, from what I've seen so far, is pretty much a death sentence. Because all it does is bring them in. Hey, I'm all over the place with these today.
I thought I was getting away from the Claude for one episode.
Should have gone to Claude on this episode.
It just shines a little daylight on how good his passive is.
God damn it.
Because it just brings him right in range. I've tried playing Leon against him. It's pretty much a suicide mission to go in on him.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see. I think you'll probably see from the pros a lot of Morgana counter. I don't know that there's a terribly obvious counter besides that, except for maybe Blitz.
Well, anybody? No. Blitz does the Blitz gets Braum to Blitz, and that's exactly where Braum wants to be.
Well, but at least
Braum's gonna get countered by anybody that's really poke heavy, so it's gonna be more Yeah, Morg, Zyra, Karma come immediately to mind, just as the big name like LCS level champs, and then Lulu if she's not getting played mid. You could
I had a
run
really
against
hard time with Lulu because it was a Lulu Ezreal, and holy shit, that's a huge ant. It was a Lulu Ezreal, and just the mobility of them, and trying to pin them down. By the way, just so you guys don't think I'm some like weird pussy, look at the size of that thing.
Holy shit.
Yeah, that just walked up on my shit there. For those of you listening out in podcast land, this is a gigantic like queen ant, and fuck, it's all over my shit right now. Now it's dead.
If you tap one in a green, you can make a 2/2 ant, and you can make a giant army, and then use over. Never. I've been playing a lot of Magic recently.
So let's finish this off. Dom, how is your week? How is it being on a show where you're not this ant won't die? Where you're not escaping DeClaude's puns. We're channeling DeClaude just for you, especially this week.
My week's been pretty good. We had the relaunch of ggchronicle.com. Go check it out, everybody. Lots of esports aggregate news, all kinds of shit going on there. With that relaunch has been a lot of work for me. I'm doing a lot of editing work there. And we've had a lot of people expressing interest in contributing in some capacity, which has required a lot of review on my part. If you are listening and somebody who also applied, we're going through it. We're working on it. Seriously, just give us some time. That's the big noteworthy stuff for me.
If you want sort of a catch-all place to find the most up-to-date esports news with very high-quality information, GG Chronicle is the place to go. Dom and Adam from the Trinity Force podcast work very intimately with that effort. As far as I know, the two pieces are separate, right? Trinity Force and GG Chronicle are not one and the same.
Yeah, there was a time when Trinity Force podcast was the official podcast of GG Chronicle. Since that's no longer the case, and it's not for like any reason other than GG Chronicle's focus now is entirely on the competitive scene. Mm-hmm. And as you guys know, the Trinity Force podcast really doesn't cover that anymore because didn't, you're here. We couldn't do it justice. So this show will show up a lot on GG Chronicle. Trinity Force podcast itself, probably not so frequently unless we have an esports personality on for one reason or another, or we just really get into some like competitive level discussion about champion picks or that type of thing. It might show up on occasion, but by and large, LCS Rundown is where the Trinity Force Network wants to focus its competitive league discussion.
So is the TForce LCS Rundown now the official podcast for GG Chronicle? Because that does have a nice ring to it.
I am not the person who gets to decide that.
I think we serve two different functions. We are a good mixture of passion and love for esports and hardcore knowledge and intimate experience with esports, and we merge those two forces together to make really
Captain
cool
Planet.
and interesting.
Would you say there's
exactly,
a union?
the Captain Planet.
Passionate union?
Yeah, really interesting conversation, and that's all it's going to be. We're smarter than anybody else in some cases over what we think or feel. Gotta love the feels. So GG Chronicle is a great place to find out the hardcore information. Get all your power rankings. They do syndicate some podcasts through there. There are. There's a variety of information, and it's not just, NA and EU as we usually tend to stay. It goes all the way to Korea and back. So,
honestly, we're gonna. This is me sort of speaking off the record here, but we do in conversations. Adam and I have been really interested in focusing on the regions outside of North America and Europe, not because we're disinterested in those, but we think the information is for those regions is pretty easy to find. So while we'll aggregate that content, we are not as interested in looking at those regions specifically for our original stuff. We're really looking at OGN for sure, GPL, LPL. We want to do coverage in like Brazil, Australia, Turkey, all that type of thing. It's really just a matter of getting the ball rolling right now. We really want to be a hub for all of competitive League of Legends, not just the LCS that most people tend to be familiar with on one continent or another.
Yeah, and absolutely. And don't forget to Check out the other sources of information for esports news. Surrender at 20 still produces great stuff every week, and there's probably a billion different subreddits on Reddit, including r/League of Legends, where you can find lots and lots of information. But if you are an RSS fan like I am, at GG Chronicle, you would have been getting their articles for months now, even though they just released a couple of weeks ago. But lots of good stuff coming out of there. Lots of good stuff to talk about this week, to seamlessly segue. So we weren't here last week, so we didn't talk about All-Stars. I didn't listen to the Trinity Force podcast recently, so I don't know if even TForce talked about All-Stars.
We didn't. We thought you guys were going to do it. You dropped the ball. What the hell, Mott?
Listen, I was sick and I was dying, and that's
Excuses.
fine. I'll take the blame.
I think there's an Instalock song about that.
You can't be sick and dying. You
What
gotta
if my
be either
sick-
dead or just
That guy knows.
sick.
What if my sickness is causing me to die?
Then you are sick, and then you are not yet dead. If
You're
you are
some kind
dying,
of zombie now.
yeah, there you
And
go.
we need to have a chat after the show.
I don't think if I was a zombie, I could chat. Then again, I'm chatting here, so obviously I'm not a zombie. Beaten, destroyed. I loved every minute of
Outplayed.
All-Stars. I didn't even hate the fire versus ice stuff. The game modes were wonky and silly, and that's exactly, I guess, what I wanted.
I actually like the challenge matches better than the actual tournament.
Well,
Is that weird to say?
No, I wouldn't go that far myself personally, but I remember coming out of last year's where we were pulling, the all-star teams. It's exactly what it should be. From all the different regions, and then you got into it and you realized, wow, these are just a bunch of people who have never practiced together, so what can you really expect? Like,
In some cases, hate each other.
Right, you get that good individual performance, but it's really all you can ever hope for. So take that same concept, mix up the regions into a little fun bag, and then make them do fun things like Earth mode and Hexakill and all that crazy stuff. The only beef that I had with the whole experience was that the VODs didn't go up fast enough. Like, I'm sitting there waiting for stuff to come in, and they prioritized for one reason or another, getting the actual games themselves up there. So that was tough.
I was surprised by how much I ended up caring about the Hexakill match specifically. It was really cool to see Toys and Messiah back on the fields for one game.
Mm-hmm.
And I wasn't even like a huge... I mean, it's not that I have any malintent or disinterest in them. Like, I just wasn't a huge follower of either of them during their careers and anything. And so when they were gone during season 3, I was like, whatever, other people taking their place. But seeing them come back for that one game was really, really cool. And then that they got matched up in mid lane, after all that was also really, to me, just really, really neat.
Yeah, I'd love to go back and watch those. I only got to kind of pseudo listen to them through work a little bit. But even then it's like, oh, well, here's a fire. I have to go put that out now. So stop listening and move on to something else. Oh, boom.
I actually like the Hexakill match the best. Or not the Hexakill, the Earth mode. It was as good as the earlier Earth mode, but without all the silliness of like the commentators thinking they need to get in on the fun. And there was like 2 segments where they hopped on player stations and tried to be cool for a second. I don't
know. The live interview,
no,
the live game interview was some of the funniest shit. And then when the European casters stole the show, that was a
The live
riot.
interview was funny, but
Look at
they
you
actually
making
That
the
was
puns
not an
now.
intentional joke. God
when
damn
they
it.
kicked him off the keyboard, I could have done without that.
Oh, man.
So this one was like all of the silliness, but without some of the silliness. And it rocked. It was so much fun to see Bjergsen go nuts and get like 20 kills on Ezreal.
Mm-hmm.
And I really stand by that we should actually have full-time Earth mode LCS. Like, it should be a sub-league.
I
It's the
feel like you'd get
best.
tired of it because I
No.
feel like you'd either one, players wouldn't take it seriously, or 2, they would take it too seriously and people would be like, hyper crunch mode, which is the top tier in Earth mode. Earth mode should be you can play anything you want ever. You should just be able to, at level 6, T-mushroom an entire bush with all 20 of your mushrooms
Yes.
and just watch somebody very slowly die by hitting each and every one of them. That's all Earth mode should ever be. It should never
Besides,
be serious.
We already have a fast and fun secondary mode to play.
Do we?
Ram.
Nobody gets the Dominion
I get
reference.
it.
Anyway, going on.
You lost me at the fun part. Sorry.
It's
That
fast,
mode
it's
is
fun.
awesome, and you are a hater.
I still like Twisted Treeline. I still play Twisted Treeline. 3v3s, man. That's the way
I
to go.
actually do wish Riot would support their other modes a bit more, because there's no good reason to not have competitive scenes for those game modes. They just haven't invested the resources to balance them properly.
It's
And they're-
kind of the argument of like, right now you see a lot more balances come to Summoner's Rift because they kind of see trends come through.
But that makes the most sense. I mean, that's
Right.
the primary game mode. That's the moneymaker. But
But
Riot could have 3 games dominating competitive esports, and they don't.
Well,
And it's on them.
I think just judging by the patch list, especially, all right, granted not in 4.6 because 4.6 had a bunch of changes come through with like Rumble change and Cassidin changes and big things for Summoner's Rift. I like looking at the patch notes, at least 50%, if not more, are specific changes to characters in like 3v3 and Dominion mode.
No, it's not 50%. It's like
It's
5-10% tops.
I don't know. The past couple of
I
patches,
go over these every single time that patch notes come out. Like, they're in there. I'll give you that. But they're doing it's very much a trickle down effort. It's not a concerted effort by the balance team.
Maybe it's like 25% 3v3 and 25% Dominion and make a collective
It's
50%.
like
Right.
it's
And now-
like 90% SR, 5% Dominion, 5% Twisted Treeline, and in both those 5% cases, it's the same balancing going on. It's just under 2 sections.
right. And I mean, who's really going to even want to play 3v3s competitively?
That mode is fun. What is
It's
I think a lot of
fun.
people like
It's fun, but
haters.
this is their career.
They still have
like,
Moonflare Spellblade in that mode, and that is the best item to be ever made.
They need to bring back Madrid's Razor.
I
in
think
its
you'll see a
fall
lot of
form.
the 3-man teams, actually. I don't think it's that weird.
I think it would be a fun challenger series. I think they should support that. Find a way to.
I'm not saying they need to give it LCS level production, but they're competitive. I mean, Riot wasn't even heavily invested in its own competitive scene until, season, like late into season 2 and everything.
Right.
The competitive scene just formed on its own, and that's great. There's no reason that couldn't happen. I mean, that would happen with Twisted Treeline if Riot gave it a bit more attention from a balancing standpoint. It's on
And I
them.
think-
They don't want to dedicate the resource. They don't want to dedicate the resource. That's
I guess it's priorities. You have a finite amount of resources. It's not like you can just pull it out of nowhere and go, all right, well now we've got like a money investment, a fiscal investment in all this stuff. Now every little itch I'm thinking is a gigantic ant just crawling over my body. This is terrible.
Dude,
And-
Oh
yeah.
fuck, it is.
As it is.
Jesus Christ.
I
Stupid
want
Summer.
to
Get the fuck out of here, Summer.
What I want to
Split.
do right now
Grow
is
your
poke the bear.
Is that a Bruins reference?
No,
Is
it's so how
you
about
really gonna do that to me right now?
How about them? How
Fucking
about
Canadians.
them? No, dude, my team lost too, so don't worry about it.
Who lost?
The Wild, come on, I'm a Minnesota guy.
Did they even play this year? Did they have a team?
Yes, we were in the Blackhawks.
My team lost.
Everybody loses to the Blackhawks.
Wait,
so,
who's
anyway,
your team, Tom?
I'm a terrible, terrible hockey fan.
And who's your team?
My team lost to the Rangers.
Who was it?
I'm a Penguins fan.
Ha ha! And Gidla, whatever, poke you because we swept you.
no, poking the bear. So how about them TSM roster swaps changes?
Yes! Oh my god, I can root for TSM again!
I can't.
Why not?
Attitude.
Your initials are TSM. It is in your blood. They are an amazing team now. Literally.
Here's the problem. Here's the
All right.
problem. Here's the problem.
You go first, and I'll tell you why you're wrong. Go.
Okay. to me personally, I look at the development of the team. I see how they react under pressure. I see how they react to good teams, and I see how they react to bad teams. And I think overall, the attitude is piss poor. And unless these new players can come in and make some sort of attitude change, I just don't think it's going to happen. I think they're going to go in and they're going to have a couple of good games. They're going to be maybe second or third place, but it's still going to be the same problem. They're going to be TSM, and they're going to do really well. And if they don't come in first, they're going to come in second, and they're going to stay there, and they're not going to have any chance of beating.
Because second is so
Cloud9.
bad.
It really is, because
Second gets to Worlds.
second gets to Worlds, but second isn't going to move past any significant amount of rounds. Second is the worst because you are.
I don't know. Cloud9 got out of group stage at All Stars with a sub on their roster and everything. So I'm not saying North America has caught up to the other regions, but
no, absolutely
it's
not.
flattening.
I think Cloud9 did great, and even though they lost, I was super proud of the NA region, and Fnatic sucked. So I just thought it was great to come in there, see them beat teams, and even though they got stomped, it was more interesting to me almost to see High's reaction in his shoutcasting from his hospital bed on Twitter, because it
was pretty funny.
It really gave you sort of a look into what his thought process is during a game and how the team works a little bit. But we're jumping subjects around too much.
Yeah, mostly I was just talking about it's parody is starting to become more and more of a thing.
Right. But I think TSM's attitude as a team from top to bottom, management all the way down, is going to prevent them from matching any skill potential that they possibly could have. Optimus Tom, tell me why I'm wrong. I want to be wrong. My fantasy team is called TS Morang. So go for it. Tell me why I'm wrong.
TSM has patched up a majority of the holes that have made them a weak LCS team.
Describe those holes and describe how they patch them.
Here's the biggest glaring hole in TSM's game. Number one, playing the game before 20 minutes. They were never a team to take an early advantage. They were never a team that were crushing a specific lane. Dyrus would be up top and you would forget he was in the game until they teleported down for a dragon fight. Bjergsen in the mid lane would make things happen if he got a gank or something went rolling. A lot of the focus was on Turtle to be Turtle and to win the bottom side of the map so that they could then pressure that dragon around that 15 to 20 minute mark and be TSM and roll the advantage from there. They had no movement really in the early game, especially if Bjergsen wasn't on like LeBlanc or wasn't on Zed, which Zed is no longer that viable because exhaust reduces his damage by 50%. Now, what were the big holes? Well, Odd1 and Reggie had pretty good synergy with one another, but Odd1 wasn't really ganking heavy on mid lane and getting Bjergsen going. It was Bjergsen a lot of solo kills that really got him going. Odd1 would go up top and maybe try to make Dyrus do something, or he'd be on the bottom side of the map, once again, all about that dragon control. Another thing was, Xpecial had, I'm going to go out on a limb and maybe I'll get a little bit flame for this one. He has a small champion pool.
No, I railed on that all season. He played through week 10. He played 3 champions. I can't remember if he finally changed it up a little bit, but he played 3 champions through week 10. It was like Annie, Leona, and Thresh.
That was it.
Annie, Leona, and Thresh stop being the 3 strongest supports in the game, then maybe that's an issue.
You got Morgana and Karma.
Yeah, Morgana, Karma,
are good alternatives,
Aphromoo was
but they're
putting
not
on clinics
better
with Alistar. Despite, he's got the lowest, or one of the lowest win rates in solo queue and everything, and Aphromoo was putting on clinics and showing that, nope, he's fine in LCS if it's the right comp for it. And especially used to be an Alistar player, like back in the day. I'm just saying.
You just really want Alistar to come back.
I love it.
Okay, Alistar is cool, but you're not going to be able to sit there and tell me that Karma and Morgana, while it might work for certain comps, are uniformly better than Thresh or Leona.
Karma and Morgana are uniformly better than Thresh and Leona.
Go die!
They beat Thresh and Leona in lane single-handedly.
And that was always TSM's strength. They were playing to have really strong laning, so that they got to late game and then were just genuinely better than their opponents by superior laning.
Right. And you say that, and to me, it's all a theoretical process because in their minds, that's what they were. They were the best team with Dragon Control. They had really strong lanes, and they acted like it. They never took their enemies for what they were, and
it's because
there were so many mistakes made.
They couldn't. That team could not do things in the early game. They are not a team for movement. They are not a team for those rotations that everybody seems to love. They were a team that was single-handedly based on being better than their opponents. That's why they struggle against Cloud9. That's why they struggle sometimes against CLG, because those players are individually, or certain lane matchups, are as good, if not better, than some of those players. Or they have the teamwork to circumvent those laning phase dominating things. Now you move into a fact where you have two new players. First one I'm going to mention, I worked with him a little bit when he was on Napkins in Disguise, is Glebe Glarblu in the bottom lane.
Didn't he change it just to Glarb?
Now he's Glebe. But
Glebe. I'm pretty disappointed about that, by the way.
I am insanely disappointed because Glebe Glarblu was the best thing to shout in the middle of a team fight. But
Balls would have been better. When
no.
When
the
Lil
only
Balls
thing
was in,
the only
my
thing
favorite.
The only thing that's good is when Balls drops low in a fight and he has to run away. But Glebe has a very good macro-oriented point of view on the game. He knows where people have to be. He knows what the objective of their composition is going to be. And while his calls aren't the best, as you've seen on Cloud9 Tempest when they were playing, he was the main shot caller. His calls might not be the best, but you have multiple members on that team to back him up for when they do get into the later game and they need to make those calls. So his overall, what do we have to do to get to the point of the game where we win, is going to be great. And then you bring in Amazing, who was, hands down, the best jungler in Europe last split. Fuck Diamond Prox, fuck Sven Skaren. Amazing single-handedly was the reason my Copenhagen Wolves took 6th place and stayed in the LCS. This
like
man
that doesn't actually sound like an
I was about to say, like, wow, 6th place.
It doesn't sound great.
If it wasn't for me, we wouldn't have gotten 6th, guys. Come on.
Single-handedly, Copenhagen Wolves in their promo games, the match they lost, Amazing got camped and shut down in his own jungle, and his lanes didn't help. He went like 0-3-2 on Kha'Zix, and then the next game was like 7-0-4 on Kha'Zix. He single-handedly will help TSM with Glebe in the early game, control enemy buffs, contest things, move around the map, gank mid lane for Bjergsen to get him going. And also, now TSM finally has a player that can use Lee Sin. No one on that team. Dyrus practiced Lee Sin for like...
Point to Tom.
Dyrus practiced Lee Sin for almost a month going into playoffs, and he sucked with him. Now you finally have a player that can play Lee Sin. Now you have to worry about that. You have to worry about Elise, Lee Sin, Nocturne, and Kha'Zix. Finally, there's a Kha'Zix player on TSM.
I think Oddone played a bit of Kha'Zix.
Yeah, terribly. Finally, there's a Kha'Zix player on TSM.
Go ahead,
so
Tom.
what worries me about TSM right now is that this is a team that has historically thrived when they had a lot of stability and played very poorly when there had been a lot of, for lack of a better term, instability. Whether it was roster changes or just people on the team were not meshing, that was, or there were a lot of fights going on behind the scenes and that type of thing. That's when they played poorly. So with this incoming instability, that's what I'm worried. That's what has me worried about TSM. It's not like they just replaced one person. Changing 40% of your roster is a much bigger deal than swapping out Chaos for Wild Turtle, swapping out the Rain Man for Dyrus, that type of thing, because they had a long time to adjust, or, Reggie and Bjergsen. Why I'm optimistic about TSM going into the split is because they no longer have any of the parts of that original, the TSM style that we had come to know and expect. I don't love, I guess, in Mott's case, but come to know, those guys are all gone. Dyrus was not really Dyrus was not one of the players to define that TSM style. And just once Hotshot GG and Chowster were gone from CLG and they really started to develop, that group of players started to develop their own style and play the game they wanted to with Monty's direction, but regardless, that's when we started to see that team take a lot of strides and become something really adaptable and formidable. Even if they took first or third place, they showed a lot of, I mean, they had genuine flashes of brilliance where they looked like the best team on the fields, and nobody could argue with it. They took third. C9's an amazing team. Nobody's disputing that. That's what has me optimistic about TSM going forward. They are now in a position where they can actually redefine their play style. I don't think Dyrus is always going to be locked into playing champions like Mundo or Shyvana. He will actually get opportunity. Like Jax is Dyrus used to be a notorious Jax player.
His name was I Play Jax.
Yeah, why haven't we seen Dyrus play Jax? I mean, Jax has been gone in and out of popularity so many times, and yet since really season 1, we haven't seen Dyrus play Jax on the competitive scene.
I hope we can see that impressive TSM that everybody loves and loves to chant, and that becomes the great thing.
I love to chant TSM at the wrong time, so I've always had that team. Curse just ACLG, TSM, TSM.
I hope that they can change their mentality about things, and I hope that these two new players don't get steamrolled.
I think you are way too worried about new players coming in here. Like every relevant team not named Cloud9 has had changes go on during this split.
Everybody's going to be coming out of a similar spot, but I think the phrase
I
would use...
Does anybody in this podcast actually think Cloud9 won't take first this split?
I do.
You do? Who do you think's going to take it then?
TSM.
Really?
Yeah, I'm not going to go that far.
I think if TSM, I would, first of all, let me just say this. I would love it if TSM earned my respect back. I would be more than happy. I
defended your family name.
Right. I get to keep my cool name association with them. I can put my summoner icon back from All-Star back to TSM 2014. It's going to be 2015, I guess, or whatever, next time. But I would love that to happen. I'd love that to be the reality. But I don't want to put up with the same TSM bullshit where they're like, oh, we're TSM. We're just going to keep doing the same thing. And it works against some people, and other people, as soon as they figure it out, can destroy it. And, well, we're not going to beat Cloud9 because Cloud9's really good. So who cares? We're going to beat everybody else because we're TSM. We're cool. We're second place. Great. Fuck you, TSM. Do better. Be the TSM that everybody wants you to be. Be the TSM that I want you to be.
The word that characterizes my feelings for them this week, it's hesitant. I don't think they're going to beat Cloud9 pretty much no matter what they do unless Cloud9 implodes.
Well,
but at the same time, I think Amazing is going to be a much better jungler for them than Odd1 was. No offense to Odd1. I don't have as much confidence in their support choice. I don't
doubt that these two new players are going to be amazing things for TSM. I just hope TSM can pull its own head out of TSM's ass. That would be great. And I really hope, by the way, that through some weird hanging out with Optimus Tom, I don't meet TSM at some point, because I really don't want to have to justify this opinion towards them.
Well, here's an interesting thing. You say that TSM attitude, but where could that attitude really be coming from except for two sources, Dyrus and Reggie?
I think Reginald does it, and I think Dyrus just sits back and is just like, hey, I'm Dyrus. I'm not going to ward top lane. What's up? Here's my pillow. I'm going to sleep on it and just go with the flow and do what Dyrus does.
To be completely honest, I would still raise concerns about Dyrus in top lane having that attitude. Like, I think for everything that I am positive with TSM about, like, for instance, the average age of their players going down, every single one of their players except for Dyrus now is basically the same age. So they have a lot more in common and more incentive to be friendly with each other aside from just teammates. Whereas like it was like Bjergsen referred to Daddy Reginald and like Old Man Odd1 and everything. You could never relate to those teammates. Dyrus is still kind of the odd man out. Not that he's that much older than everybody, but he's been in the team for longer and still does kind of have those old TSM tendencies.
Right. I think Dyrus is too talented and adaptable of a player for that to be a concern. He has demonstrated nothing but a willingness to play exactly what TSM has needed him to play. Regardless of whether or not that was what he wanted to play, he played what TSM needed out of him. Additionally, he holds himself incredibly accountable. Like, he will have a game where everybody else will say, no, you didn't do anything wrong. You played fantastic. And be like, nope, I fucked up here, 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 and here. And I was the one who lost the game for us.
But he also has the TSM mentality where he says, okay, I lost the game, and never adapts. They put a warding totem in the game, and the guy still doesn't ward top lane. Come on. Like,
and see, it's so funny that you guys are, without your own knowledge, passively proving all of my points. You keep saying adapt to the TSM way and the TSM way, and if he's gonna be like TSM, who do you think defines TSM? Is it the players? Is it the management staff? Or is it going to be the two new people who just get inserted into the roster? Are they really going to define TSM? It's gonna have to be a full culture change for them to actually take advantage of the two new players and their strengths. They're going to need to bring in these people and say, here's where you're really good, and here's how we need to change to suit your style of play. Or is it going to be, here's who we are. We're TSM. Now you're TSM. Now here's the TSM you need to be.
I don't know. I don't necessarily, like, there's two conflicting viewpoints. First off, TSM doesn't have somebody that says, this is what you're good at. This is how we should adapt to the game. Otherwise, they would have been in first place a long fucking time ago. Like, there's no one on the staff that does that. They don't have a staff that does that.
Am I wrong to say that Reginald is their coach?
Yeah, that doesn't mean he does that. He runs TSM.
At this point, I don't even know if Reginald functions in that capacity. I mean, I think Odd One's supposed to be the coach here, and Reginald is the brand manager. He's the manager. Handles
CEO. He's like everything. Of
yeah,
TSM.
no, but no, he handles personnel, roster movements, and that type of thing. But I don't think I don't know how much he is going to be. How much analysis and feedback he's going to be providing in the future. Obviously, he played a role last split.
You're sowing so much confidence into TSM with me right now. Keep telling me about how well they're going to do.
And you are supposed to be better than a fair weather fan over there.
What?
Yeah.
Oh, hello.
You stand by your team regardless of the roster moves and everything, and you're just like bailing on them because you don't like you don't like what they did in the offseason.
I feel like we have so many games that we can play where I can start to switch my preferences. I look at the same shit coming from TSM time and time again. And I go into a game and I realize what's going to happen, and I can see the stupid mistakes, and I've gone off on them before, and I'm just done putting up with their bullshit. And if they can change, great. But this is a bad relationship, and I'm going to get out. I'm going to take my CDs, and I'm going to go to find a new relationship.
Bandwagon.
I'm not going to get on the Cloud9 bandwagon. You know what train I'm riding, though? Dude, LMQ.
Oh, wow.
Are you on the
riding the train?
train?
You're riding the train straight to 5th place. How cute.
Oh! I have a question, actually. We could go now. Yeah, I actually do have a question, though. So, Curse, Addict Special. Is Curse going to finish better than 4th for once?
No, but with most of the roster changes in NA, I'm going to preface it with in NA, I think all the roster changes in NA have been more beneficial than detrimental to every team. So, like, in talking about TSM, obviously we got really heated about TSM because they're one of the biggest NA teams. So, looking at
except for EG.
Well, one of the biggest League of Legends teams in NA.
Well, actually, this EG raises an interesting point. Have we heard for sure that there's not going to be any changes for EG? Because they were talking about
still doing
games start next week, so we haven't heard anything by now.
Let's see.
They have the ability. They have the ability to pick up players and swap them around. As the only rule I'm 100% certain about is substitutes have to be like substitute players for the position have to be announced 24 hours before game time. So they could.
All I know is we haven't heard anything yet.
They could, in theory, have a bunch of subs on their roster right now, and then just decide who is going to play game time decision.
That's possible.
Which I think more teams should do, to be completely honest. That's a whole nother topic.
Yeah, Obscurica wrote whether he wrote an article or he just has strong opinions on it, I can't remember, but he kind of thinks every team should have like basically a B team that is ready to step in and fill the shoes of somebody on the starter squad at any time.
I would love to see that happen more. I would love to see teams that have dynamic rosters to adapt to certain teams. Like I'd love
I think
to
we
see.
talked about that on the last show, actually.
Yeah.
I'm all for it as well.
But before we move on to the rest of the LCS, because we're eventually going to get into matchups for the week 1 of the summer split, any other thoughts about All-Stars and SKT1 just being SKT1?
Is anyone here surprised that the Koreans won?
No.
Anybody?
No.
I was surprised. I was
pumped.
surprised at how dominant they were. I expected a little bit more of a better fight from some other teams, but.
Yeah. I'm super happy about 3-1 Cloud9.
Yeah, I was happy to see that. Fnatic didn't show up. Fnatic. Nope. I like Fnatic. I really want to see Fnatic succeed. They've won the split 3 times in a row, so it's not like this is a bad team that's going out there. But they are just from a pragmatic standpoint, they're going to have to get their act together and start hiring secondary personnel to really. A, keep the players in line, and B, help them improve where in areas where they've been deficient. That's also a criticism that can be held against pretty much Europe as a whole. Mm-hmm. And it might be why there have been so many European players migrating to the North American scene over the last split. Tom might have some insight there. I know he has strong opinions there.
Who's all excited to hop aboard the Super Hot Crew hype train? Choo choo! I am.
You're not sticking with your boys Rocat?
Well, Rocat's like a given already, but so Rocat has no changes. They're still super strong, and this is actually something I talked about before the podcast. I wanted to kind of bring into a little bit. NA and EU are going to be doing a role swap or a lane swap. Let's keep it thematic here. Whereas NA has had
throw this bottle at you.
Well, NA has had 2 dominating teams for basically ever. EU has always been like this deadlock of ties and anybody can beat anybody. I think we're going to have a swap, and this kind of goes in favor with why I think maybe Cloud9 is going to have a harder time. Cloud9 could still stomp TSM like 4-0, but they'll have a harder time against the upcoming competition that is the NA LCS. We're going to have NA be a lot closer this split, I feel, and EU is going to be a little bit different. Fnatic, while they may not have like the support staff they need to compete on a worldwide level, has won every single LCS split in Europe. Mm-hmm. Rocket has not changed anything, and they are still a really good team. Gambit is no longer Gambit, really. They still have 4 of their 5 members, but they have a lot to work on now because that's a team that's played together since like day 1. And it's not like you're changing out Edward, who was the support, which support is a more important role now than it was when they lost Edward. You're losing your mid laner, who a lot of not only just the meta in Europe revolves around, but is a very big cornerstone into the game, period, for every single region. So you're changing your mid laner, and you have to rework that dynamic. So Gambit is going to suffer a little bit of a blow. In the long run, we'll see how it winds up working out for them. That's one of the roster changes that it's more internal than performance-based, so it's really hard to comment on. But I think it's going to hurt Gambit a little bit more before it helps them, if it helps them at all. But the rest of Europe, like, there's all these fluctuating roster changes, like Copenhagen and Wolves lost the 2 people that carry them, and everybody's saying, like, okay, well, those 2 players defined the playstyle for the Wolves, and now they can do other things. You have the 2nd worst top laner in Europe and the worst mid laner in Europe on that team. So that team isn't really going to wind up going anywhere. Super Hot Crew is the first European team to start bringing in a support staff, and maybe it's just because I love the guy so much, but they brought in Last Shadow, lives in Korea, played StarCraft for a while in Team Incredible Miracle, top Diamond 1 low challenger player in the Korean ladder, has worked with other league teams in Korea. He knows his shit. He's like a savant at video games. When you bring that in and you're working with a team that has the talent but doesn't have the ideas to work with, that's why I think I'm like all aboard the Super Hot Crew hype train. 4th place, that's good enough for me, as long as they improve, because I like those guys a lot.
Let's talk a little bit about the Wolves. You mentioned that they've got their superstars left. How much do we know about the people replacing them?
Airwax or Airwalks, however you're going to pronounce it, because it has some funny characters in there. He played with the old Eternity Gaming. He replaced Shacker when Shacker left for EG. He played with STO, which is a French team that had Spontex on it, and Kuja and a bunch of other French players who didn't really go anywhere. And he played with heavy bot lane in the Coke League. They got eliminated in the first round of Coke League twice. So he's another one of those junglers that's just kind of like, I can play Vi when Vi's popular. I can play Kha'Zix when Kha'Zix is popular. He has a pocket Lee Sin like almost every single jungler that wasn't on TSM before Amazing should probably have. Like, that's interesting enough. And then they brought in Woolite, who played on Denial, and he was their sub for a while. And Woolite, he's Polish, and Polish guys are apparently pretty good unless you're on MYM. So maybe he'll be good. But now they're more of a kind of team-focused team, and unless their solo lanes really step up, the players on Copenhagen Wolves are really great guys, but they're not top tier. And this is going to be taking players that are already in LCS and trying to make them a Cloud9, which I don't think is going to work.
Yeah, I've got doubts.
It's a case where the reason Fnatic, Rocat, and Alliance all look so good is because the competition just got worse by virtue of players virtue of players leaving, roster changes, all that type of thing. So you have 3 good teams and then kind of a dark horse candidate in Super Hot Crew, and that's basically reflecting what happened in North America last split. To really echo your point earlier, Tom, everybody would have went into the split thinking basically TSM, Cloud9, TSM, and CLG look like the 3 top teams. Granted, visa issues became a thing for Dexter, but and then everybody, was it just me or did most people kind of think Evil Geniuses were like the dark horse candidate going into the split? Obviously, it didn't work out for them. They were.
No,
I expected you didn't think they were.
I expected XDG to be the dark horse team going into the split. To be honest.
Oh, that's a good point. I forgot that I forgot that Vulcan was a good team at one point. No, I remember they were a team. I forgot they were a good team.
At the Battle of the Atlantic, Evil Geniuses went 3-0 against their competition. That was my first look at their Pobelter and Alex.
They played
you mean the promotion tournament?
No. I mean
They didn't play at Battle of the Atlantic.
They played in the promotion tournament. The promotion tournament Battle of the Atlantic
kicked Dignitas up and down the fields of justice.
Sorry,
but
I'm thinking of promotion tournament. Yeah, but they won pretty handily. I thought they were going to do much better than they did. I think some visa issues hurt them as well, but they probably could have avoided the relegation games, but they were never going to honestly beat Cloud9. So
I mean, for EG, and I only want to just touch on this before kicking you to the curb because it's not really that important. EG wins if Snoopy shows up. If he doesn't show up, then they don't win games. It just doesn't matter. Everybody, you can talk about the individual prowess of every other player on that team, and it doesn't matter because when Snoopy shows up for games, then they win. And he just, either everybody else needs to figure out how to step up and actually contribute to those games in a meaningful way, or Snoopy just has to, put on his big boy pants and really take it to every other team every single game. That's a daunting and exhausting task to ask for one person there, and I feel for the guy who's, really, really past his prime at this point, with all due respect, because he was, he's had a very good, incredible career,
And just to update on what is currently listed for them, so they still have, and I'm pulling this information off Leaguepedia, the only person they have on their active roster by this count is DKB Net. So they still have listed as temporary subs as ThinkCard, Executioner, Ken, and Robert X. Lee. So
they can't use Robert.
There really doesn't seem to be any info as to whether or not these roster changes are going to be happening on EG.
So the rumors are the only confirmed rumor, which is not a true thing because it's still a rumor, is that you're replacing Yellow Pete. That's still Reddit detective kind of speculation, but judging by how many games he's played with Crepo and judging by how he was playing with Crepo during the split as well, I feel like that might be a pretty solid Reddit investigation going on.
How much of an improvement would that actually be, though?
I was actually just going to ask the same thing. So, I mean, Mash Me was there once and then got kicked off coast for
Well.
Fusion, who
Yeah.
Well, I
you
feel
got
like
replaced with Wiz Fusion.
you kind of have to delve into the mentality of a team and what goes on behind the scenes. Like when your AD carry doesn't get along with your players to the point where they get in a physical fight, and that's why he gets kicked off the team. That's a completely different thing than a performance-based kick from the team. Mash Me, I think, is a step up from Yellow Pete. I honestly
I agree
don't
there.
think Yellow Pete is a great laning AD carry at all.
now Yellow Pete is like in the top. He's in the top of the challenger leaderboards, right? As far as solo queue goes.
I don't honestly.
I feel like that's what I feel like that's what I keep hearing about him. I might be wrong. So even
I think
so,
you're thinking of
operating on that is maybe that. No, Sneaky I know is in the top, but nobody's questioning.
Mash Me was number one when he changed his name to Loco Dodo. He was number one for a very long time.
My point really is, so even if he's not in the top, I mean, presuming he's in the challenger leaderboards and everything, how is he not figuring out how to translate that skill into actual performance when it matters for him?
Because he doesn't listen to Beethoven during LCS, I guess.
Well,
Have you ever
the thing I
watched
notice
this
about Pete's play, I watch all the EJ games because I like the team, regardless of their performance. I'm a fan. And the thing I notice about Pete's play is he's solid. He rarely has a bad game, but he's also not explosive. He's not the guy to actually carry in the same way that a double lift or a wild turtle can.
And that would matter if he was the jungler for
Right.
the team, but he is the AD carry.
Exactly.
He needs to be able to do that. He needs to be able to show up and do that when the game starts to fall apart. He needs to be able to be the one that step up and do that. And if he can't, I'm sorry, then you don't really belong on an LCS roster and everything. You're not,
He belongs on an LCS roster if the other LCS if the other roles were more spectacular. Like
Yes.
he would be perfect if they had like a superstar mid laner and like a superstar jungler. Then he's a really consistent damage source that can wear down tanks and draw fire. But he's got nothing else there.
That's still not going to put you into the top 3 teams. And what's the point of playing an LCS unless you're trying to go to Worlds?
I think it's worked just fine for Sneaky. I mean, he's not an explosive carry either.
Except Sneaky has stepped up and gotten the job done when his team is needed to do it.
Sneaky is a little bit of a unique case because for a while he was an uninspiring 5th member of the team, whereas he's really stepped his game up recently. And Yellow Pete has stepped his game up as well. But I feel like whereas Cloud9 is a cohesive team, where everybody plays consistently well. Evil Geniuses they are so streaky. They're you can't compare the two because there's no fundamentals. If you put Yellow Pete in Cloud9's roster, their overall performance would go down compared to Sneaky. But he would still look fairly well because I feel Yellow Pete's strength has always been team fights, whether it be positioning, which maybe recently hasn't been as on par as it has in the past, or just being able to clean up a fight. That's what he was good at. But I also feel like whereas with Snoop, the meta has changed so many times and Snoop's never caught up, it's starting to do the same thing with Pete. He never played carry 80 carries in Season 3. He played Vayne at the end of the split, and they started winning at that point in time. But he hasn't really adapted. I still feel like the meta is shifted away from where he's strong, and because he gets bullied around in lane so often, he never reaches his peak power in team fights. If he had a jungler or a roaming mid laner or somebody else that could apply pressure elsewhere on the map and give him time to farm up, it would be fine. There are teams whose strategies revolved around that, like the Copenhagen Wolves. Create pressure on the map, let our AD carry farm up, and then team fight, and he helps us win the game. EG just doesn't have that altogether.
So taking a look at it from a macro perspective, I mean, at 24 years old, his contract ending in October. He's been in EG and CLG Europe for the longest time. Is the R word going to pop up for a player like Yellow Pete, and maybe not necessarily Yellow Pete in particular, but players like Yellow Pete when you get to that stage in the game?
I mean, if you ask me, it's interesting about the retire word's interesting because we have Saint Vicious reforming Curse Academy, they just
Lost.
qualified.
No, they won.
No, they qualified.
They
They
won.
won. Yeah,
They
And
beat
that's-
Denial's poke comp 45 minutes into the game with a Jax.
of course, because Jax. Don't get me started on Jax. So I don't think part of it I think is some of these players simply need a change of pace. They need to be in under different conditions and with different players that can really bring out the best qualities of them. Sort of like what Alex Ish did by leaving Gambit. He's with a different group of players, and whether it's him, he's reinventing himself as a top player, or he's with a group of guys that are going to sort of bring out the best qualities of him as a player, and he's going to be thirsty for competition and victory again. I think I think it really is complacency in a lot of these cases.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't even put it to that. I think you get so used to playing for one team, and you very much are CLG or you are EG, and then you look at the end of the road and you say, I guess maybe at this point. And there's been tweets and Reddit posts and little pokes here and there, I think from especially Crepo, where they're kind of saying like, well, we're all going to do what's best for the team. And then that, of course, spurred a billion rumor fests. But, I mean, when you're in his kind of position, do you really take a look at it and say like, okay, I'm going to step up and get paid a ton of money, then I'm going to get paid anyway to be the best and try to win? Or do you maybe just say, maybe it's time for me to take a step back and maybe consider either a lifetime career position where you're trying to be a coach or a sponsor or something like that? Or do you just go look for another job?
Flip side of the coin, I know this question has been posed for Yellow Pete, but I feel like it's more answerable by Snoop A. Like,
I think
100%.
I think Snoop A has such a good personality, and he's so well spoken that he can go in and just be a coach or get a job with Riot. I think he's pretty secure.
I feel like Snoop A could be EG's marketing guy. Period. Like,
he has. Yeah. I mean, he said as much. He says he has a lot of interest in doing things that are really outside being a player at this point. Right. So if he retires from professional play, I don't expect him to go away. And I think that's good. I think that it's good that he's sort of looking at his future and what he's going to do. And most people, retire and then they go back to school or whatever. And somebody's like, no, I want to be involved and I want to do other things. I still stand by the statement that Snoop A is right now is the guy who is deciding who decides whether or not that team loses. And that's the problem that they need to address. If that means replacing him, that means then that's one thing. But I think there are 4 other guys on that team, regardless of who's playing. I think there are 4 other guys on that team who need to step up and make it so it's less of a burden on his shoulders.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think no matter what they do, I agree. Snoop A is probably best in the coaching role, but either Snoop A or Yellow Pete probably do need to get switched out just for that complacency factor. But also, honestly, they need a stronger mid laner that's more influential in the early mid game than Pobelter. Because you can't put it all in the jungler, like Dom said. You need somebody else, and Inox is consistent enough. But
no, you have to hold Inox just as accountable as Pobelter.
But
if you're going to try,
top lane is a little more isolated. Top lane's a little more isolated. Top lane's not roaming bot.
Top lane's also a position that can carry the shit out of a game. We've seen it with SKT. Hell, the only games Coast won were when Zion got out of control on Jax. But top lane is an incredibly influential position.
While I feel like both solo laners are frequent to the fact where either it's Pobelter shows up or Throwbelter shows up or Enox or not Enox shows up in top lane. Outbox or inbox either shows up in the top lane. But even if those players have a lack of consistency in their play, as long as they're not in the same game, like if Throwbelter is in the same game as inbox, that's great, or Outbox is in the same game as Pobelter, then it can still work.
I like that nickname.
You can't control a situation like that by one player. Like, you still need a bottom lane that can win their lane or go even and not lose. You need a jungler that could at least set up for that dragon pressure to let inbox teleport in or apply pressure mid lane to let Pobelter run around the map. They don't have the keys to make those solo laners powerful. They picked up the 2 best players that they thought could win their lanes to apply pressure by themselves. But when they put them on an LCS level, 5 times out of 10, they didn't win their lane.
Yep. Right. And I think when you really boil it down to, numbers and figures here. If EG as a team loses Snoopy, they lose their sex appeal. And a team...
Have you seen Crepo?
I don't know. I think there's a certain demographic that would go for Crepo over
Right.
Snoopy. There's a certain demographic.
Some people just love the Belgian chocolate.
I linked it in Twitch chat. Just look at the team picture on the
It's in
Yeah, I
LOL
looked-
Esports.
I looked at that.
It's just S is
He's
for
like-
sex
he's-
appeal. That's
yeah.
what it is. But speaking of sex appeal, we do need to wrap up this lovely episode of the TForce LCS rundown. But I do want to hit on one more topic before we end our show tonight. And
I'm
that
sorry.
is the LCS Fantasy League.
Which I can't log into. Yeah.
I'm going to make a statement.
Oh.
We're gonna.
I'm going to make a statement right now.
I'm stepping up for just a sec.
I want Dom to hear this statement because I want the reaction.
I was still wrapped up on sex appeal and wrap it up.
I'm going to hold off my statement until Dom gets back. But for those of you who are living under a big, fat, flabby rock, despite of many attempts to get fantasy sports running for League of Legends, Riot has finally come out and said, we're going to do our thing. We're going to make it. It's up and live now. You can have teams in as low as, or leagues rather, in as low as 4 and as high as 8. My team name in our TForce League is TS Morang. That's TSM, my name. And I'm super pumped for it. Fuck it. I'm going to make my statement, even though Dom's not here to hear it. Oh, perfect. He came back. Wait for it. All right, Dom, here it comes. I think that the fantasy sports release from Riot is the best thing to happen to League of Legends esports since free, highly produced HD streaming.
I think it will be with enough time to refine the process, because I'm still a big fantasy football and fantasy baseball buff, and looking at the way the fantasy LCS is scored, I see a lot of big numbers that don't mean too much to my fantasy brain.
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking forward to this. I think it's going to be fun. I like that we are internally building up a big Trinity Force proper versus LCS rundown competition
Is
going
that what that
on.
is?
Yeah, that's what we want. I don't
okay.
know. We'll figure out something, but I like how there is a competitive element going on here. I do worry that there is so much weight, or that there's a lot of weight on statistics I would otherwise find not meaningful, and they could instead weight games in a much different, or weight players in a much different fashion. But since we haven't done our draft and I haven't really seen how everything breaks down, I can't speak with any type of authority specifically there.
It's funny, about 24 hours before they made this announcement, I was actually building the ranking systems for individual players in a little notebook that I keep.
Hi Lemon. Hi Lemonation.
Right. Trying to figure out, all right, what are the key factors? How can you rate not players on the same team against each other, so who is more influential on that team, but apples to apples, top lane to top lane, who is more of an effect. And then they came out with this, and I threw out my book, and then I looked at how it was going to be ranked, and then I picked the book back up and went, okay, margin of trades ranking, or MOT rankings, is probably going to have to be a thing for the summer split. But the reason why I'm so excited about this is because this gives me a reason, other than the fact that I do a podcast about it, to really give a shit about the other games in the LCS. Here's what I like. Before I was doing this show, here's what I liked to watch. I like to watch TSM win, and I like to watch Curse lose.
And now I got numbers to my Curse losing.
And if it wasn't one of those two scenarios live when the game's happening, honestly didn't care. And this is all pre-podcast, of course. And this is, I think, a big reason why coming into the show I didn't care that much about EU is because I didn't have any stake in those teams. And I think there are a lot of fans out there who feel maybe the same way. They really like teams like Cloud9 and I'm speaking solely of North America here, of course. And I'm sure the EU feels the same way about their EU teams. But North American fans probably have an affinity towards Cloud9, where they're just the accepted best team, and they like to watch them win.
Yeah, but the same should be said about Fnatic in EU right now. Then
no, I do agree. But
or at least
it's the so what factor for these other teams. And if you look at professional sports, the adoption of like draft football and fantasy baseball and all that other stuff, that was a huge boon to those sports, because now you have Joe Football out in Texas, who really only gave a shit about Texas teams, now all of a sudden caring about what's going on the East Coast because he's got Tom Brady in his draft. And like that matters. Watching that game and seeing how those games unfold from a perspective of the NFL, they're getting more eyes on their games because you have 4 or 5 games, you have that one person's attention for that one game, and then they're gone. Well, now you have them for all of them because their players are all over the place. You form the subculture.
From a marketing standpoint, it's very smart by Riot. From a fanaticism standpoint, I guess, it's almost the other way, because now, yeah, you have a lot of people watching games they otherwise wouldn't have been interested in, but they're the same people who are going to say, oh, this fucking player just lost me my week for reasons. And is that better than not having a fan?
I think first of all, it develops conversation. It
gets people invested, whether they're positive investment or negative investment. Sometimes negative will make them watch more.
The worst thing in the world to me is a player who sits back and goes, ooh, this game is really interesting. I love that this team won, and I don't feel bad about the other team winning. And oh, that was a really great game. Both teams tried super hard. Because that attention span only lasts for so long. You need to develop a love and a hate for certain teams to be really emotionally invested into it. And you see that a lot in sports. I hate the Canadians right now. The Canadians being the hockey team.
That sounded so terrible.
The Canadiens.
I know. I just like, oh god, that's.
It's a good thing the team name isn't something a little more sensitive.
Right. Damn Redskins. I hate them. I hate them because
I hate the Japanese.
They beat us, and they deserve to beat us. The Bruins deserve to lose for that exact reason. And it was the worst, and I hated every moment of it. And there was literally a game. It was I was on my couch with covers over my head in almost the fetal position watching it because it was sudden death overtime, and it was going to end. And that was such a stress-filled moment for me.
You didn't have those like in the CLG TSM game, like the last one last season, last split?
No.
How about the one at MLG with the Nintanso?
I get ramped up. When Curse might beat TSM. That weird split, that half of a split where Curse was fucking on fire.
You mean
like just running over everybody?
You mean the whole split until the last week?
I was like, I was pissed.
And then they benched Elements.
I watched those games because I was like, holy fuck, like beat Curse, lose Curse, just die. That attention span is only going to go on for so long if you're a I love everybody player. And you know what's going to kill it? WildStar. Or what's that other game there? Watch Dogs. You have a ton of different games out there that can capture somebody's attention. If you're Riot, mind you. If you're Riot. You have so many other things that can pull attention away from a player.
There's a very big difference between pulling members of the general player base away to a different game and thus away from League of Legends, and pulling fans of competitive gaming away. And I don't think WildStar
It's all about free time.
I
What
don't
can
think
you do?
I don't think WildStar and
That was just
Watch
example.
Dogs.
That
Sure,
was just an example.
okay, but to use your examples, I don't think those games or any other games are in a position to pull away from competitive League of Legends. I mean, realistically, there you have to be looking at Dota 2, and then fighting game and other real-time strategy.
Just
type
so we're
stuff.
clear, I'm talking about viewership of regular players, and not like, oh man, I'm Snoopy
Oh.
and WildStar came
Yeah,
out. Oh,
fine,
fuck League of Legends.
but Riot,
No,
Riot
it's
doesn't have a
nothing like
reason
that.
to care about the viewership of any given player.
I think they do, because it all comes down to money. They need eyeballs. They need eyeballs to stick. That's why they do stuff like All-Stars. And if they can't find some tangible, sticky way to say, hey, here's something that you need to care about, and you need to care about it in all of these different formats, and you need to watch every single game every week, because if it gets to the point where the LCS becomes such a money sink that it's like, hey, we're Riot and we're fucking dishing out money. Like, new casters, great, bring them in. Awesome, Challenger Series. Oh, fuck, now people want Twisted Treeline covered. Like, holy shit, we got to pay for this now. It's going to get to the point where the parent company to Riot, above them, takes a look and goes, well, fuck, like, you're not making money. You're just destroying your finances. And it may not happen this year or next year, but it could come down the line where they don't have ways to make money off this venture because it's so expensive to run and maintain.
Teemo skins.
Teemo skins.
And Vigar, don't forget Vigar.
Vigar skins.
I
right.
have a bit of an interesting viewpoint on it because I don't know how it works. Preface, I do stats for the EULCS, and I wish this is something I was involved with, but I'm not at work. But I have no idea if how it keeps track of the stats when you watch the game. Point in case, when I did a fantasy league on ESPN.com or CBS and things were updated in real time and they had the overview game coverage and play-by-play, like everything, even if the game wasn't on TV, I was invested in that game for my fantasy players. Yahoo Fantasy, on the other hand, didn't update until the end of the day for games. I would set my team and walk away and not bother to watch any games I didn't care about. If the League of Legends fantasy site doesn't update with numbers or tangible evidence at the end of a game or during a game or something, I fear for the people that might not be as invested in some of those teams they don't care about but have fantasy players for, just setting their lineups and not bothering to look at the game.
I almost feel like if you don't have that live and update information, you're more critical of, like, if you have a group of people who are into it, like, I'm going to have to make changes on the fly because it's Super Week and my team's going to be playing every other team. I need to know what the changes are from day to day. If you don't have that live update where you can just sit there at your dashboard and go like, okay, Crepo just got another kill, like he stays on the roster for tomorrow, like that kind of crazy analysis, you kind of have to go back and watch the games.
Do we even know if you have your lineup set for a week? Can you change people on a per day basis? I don't think so.
I don't know. I mean, we haven't gotten into the point in our league yet where we can change stuff up. So.
Oh, I know. I just joined.
Right. I don't know. I don't have those answers yet. But I really think that if this is done and executed well and it's community supported, I feel very bad for ESL and that other weird company that was at PAX that I talked to a billion times that try to make these fantasy sports things. But Riot's picked it up, and I think they have the marketing command to make their tool the tool of all tools. I think that's just the way it's going to be. And I think it's a smart move. I think if you give incentive to people to play something, and you give the common man, I'll even say if you give a guy like me sort of a way to quantify, like, this is how this player performed versus the other one, past just the way you felt, in a game, I think that gives a much better perspective, and I think this fantasy league is going to help a lot with that.
I'm super excited for it because I would love a fantasy LCS. I'm just hoping that this is. I'm just hoping that they just don't make it and then be like, all right, we did it, and walk away. Like, they need to make this a dynamic
with anything
thing.
other than Dominion and Twisted Treeline.
So 2/3.
Yeah.
ARAM, half.
Well, but
Give them
they've
half.
no Aaron. They said they were basically going to put out
Oh,
there,
yeah?
but it's going to be imbalanced.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Counterpoint. Magma chamber.
Is that even out yet? Can I play
No.
that? Right
It
now?
will never be out.
It's not happening.
By the way, MOT rankings is a thing, and it's gonna be. I'm gonna talk about
All right.
it every week. It's
Wait,
gonna
hold
be
on,
awesome.
hold on. So since I think this is relevant enough to close the show out with,
Okay.
Fantasy LCS is starting up. What are MOT rankings for the top 5 players for your fantasy draft? Because
Honestly,
they're probably completely different than mine.
I'm way too lazy to go back and rate it because here's how I do it. Pretty much everybody, but this is probably not going to work. I'm not an analyst here. I'm not going to make claim to that. But here's how it's set up, okay? And this isn't refined yet, so don't make fun of me too much. Marksman, mid laners, top, and jungle all get points for kills, lose points for deaths, and get points for assists. Additionally, they also get points for being involved in dragons, barons, and towers. If your team takes a tower, but you're in top lane, it's like half points or something like that. I haven't quite figured it out. All it is and supports get points for assists, the same amount that are rated for kills.
That's
with the other
racist.
positions. Well, if
Does that mean I
support
could
gets-
say my rankings since yours aren't finalized?
No, fuck you.
I want to say my rankings. You're basically getting insight into our draft later.
I guess. But basically, all I'm doing is an apples to apples way that I can look at all the top laners and go, this week, this top laner did this in comparison to this top laner. And I can say, by my weird system, that this top laner is better than the other. And this top laner, while maybe he didn't die as much, isn't that good because it's been consistently low. But what's your rankings?
All right. So 2 points for a kill, 1.5 points for an assist, and minus half a point for deaths.
That's way too many halves. Keep them whole, man.
This means that a kill is equal to 4 deaths and an assist is equal to 3 deaths. So as long as your player has basically any sort of number of most kills and assists possible and the least amount of deaths, that obviously gets you the best player.
No, you have to factor in objectives.
No, you don't.
Yeah, you totally do.
No, because they don't really matter as much compared to a high KDA ratio.
They totally do.
They do not at all.
If you get shut down in your lane,
Yes.
you die, let's say you're a Vayne and you die 5,000 times.
Yes.
You have died 5,000 times.
You've
But-
lost the game at that point. You're not. That's not
You
winning.
take dragon every time it's up, and you get to the point where everybody has max gold. You have your 6 items. Let's say for some fucking fluke you
So
get
this is
there.
a CLG game. Go on.
What does it matter if 1 or 2 kills get stacked on top of that already high number? If you, personally as the marksman, let's just say, if you completely flush out your lane, you destroy all 3 towers, the inhibitor, and push on to the nexus. If you've died 50 times, sure, you've given a lot to the other team in terms of an advantage, but what does it really matter if, first of all, you win, and second of all, you have great objective control? Like, that's always been sort of the difference between a bad team and a great team, is the ability to get objectives.
That's great for the team and terrible for my fantasy stats. So
Well,
I don't
that's-
give a shit about that
Actually,
in my fantasy
that,
world.
that's why I like that Riot introduced the you draft a team also. So
Right.
that those type of objective stats can factor into your weekly performance. I don't know if things are weighted appropriately to make drafting
Right.
that team meaningful enough
I do
to
hope that
affect
you
your
have
weekly
to-
results.
And I don't know the official. I heard that you can only have 2 players for every position. So a max team of 10 total players on your team. So basically 1 role and then a sub.
Let's-
But I hope that you do have to draft a top, mid,
Oh yeah.
marks, okay, and support.
You have to
can't
draft
just go
one
like,
for every role.
I have 2 mids, 2
I feel like-
ADCs, and
I think
ton.
it's
You
one
have
for
to draft
every
one for
three
each role.
subs.
It's like any other fantasy thing where, like, you might be able to grab Shifter, but if you already
Right.
have Bjergsen on your team and you don't have a marksman, well then tough shit. You
Right.
got to fill the role. You can't just grab. And I pick names.
So here's the thing. Going back to your 80 carry point really quick. You die 5,000 times and your team takes a bunch of dragons. That's great. But if I draft double lift and he dies 5,000 times and I don't have CLG as my fantasy team, all I'm doing is losing points. So that doesn't matter to me in fantasy.
Well, I'm not talking about fantasy. I'm talking about MOT rankings.
Oh, well, MOT rankings are flawed then because all you should care about is your fantasy team.
I need a way to personally objectify every team member and judge them super hardcore. And until fantasy has pointed itself as a valid way to rank people, that's what I'm going with. In my awesome Google Partners, you can't really see it because it's engraved, but Google Partners white book that they sent my company.
I don't know. I still feel like fantasy is going to be very highly catered towards the players that don't die and the players that make things happen, which is why for everybody out there in fantasy LCS land, your top 5 prospects should be number 1, Froggen. Second least deaths in EU mid lane, second most kills, second most assists. Most kills and assists was Xpeke, and he had like 25 something more deaths, so that's not worth it. Froggen, top fantasy prospect. Mid laner. Next 2 are 80 carries, Turtle and Sneaky. They don't die a lot. They either get a lot of kills or a lot of assists when the team groups up. They're going to be great. Double lift, terrible. Either he stomps his lane or he gets shut out till the team fighting phase. And don't talk to me about CS totals because it takes 200 CS to equal 1 kill in the fantasy league. So CS doesn't really matter. The next 2 ones you're going to want to pick up, 5th place is a little bit awkward. 4th place, Bjergsen, because he's going to get a lot of kills. He might die, but in the games he dies a lot, he gets a lot of kills. And since deaths, you need 4 deaths to equate to 1 kill, you're probably going to work out better than if you drafted Throw-Belter. Anyway, the last pickup that you're probably going to be looking for, and it's really hard to determine, but I feel like you're going to want to get a stable support. The support that I'm thinking of is Vander. He initiates every single fight, especially if he gets Thresh, Morgana, or Leona. Those are his 3 champions. He initiates fights, and he never really dies. He sets things up, and he helps his lane get ahead, and then roams around the map. So those are the top 5 fantasy prospects. If you just draft all those players on your team, you win. You're not going to get them all, of course, because everybody's going to pick everything. Optional things, Dexter and Amazing. Those are the optional 2 junglers to pick up. That's your whole fantasy team. That's how you win fantasy esports.
I'm just sad that we have a super knowledgeable group in our fantasy league because I want to join the one where they're like, oh, Snoopy! I got Snoopy! Like, yeah, coolest jungler in the world. I'm like, fuck you, I have Amazing. Go TSM. And with that, we're going to end the show. So this has been the TForce LCS Rundown. Do not forget to check us out live shortly after 9 o'clock every Sunday night, Eastern Time, 9 p.m. Twitch, stream.trinityforcepodcast.com. You can leave us feedback at trinityforcepodcast.com. You can leave us reviews on iTunes. We love those. Please check out our other shows. Visiting Dom comes from the TForce LCS Rundown. I assume everybody who watches this show watches that. Wow, I just called that the...
Sorry.
Yeah, whatever it was.
Come from the Trinity Force podcast, and thanks for having me, guys. This was a lot of fun.
Thanks for coming.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Snoopy of podcasting.
Yeah, right. I have been Monkenor. I'm joined this week by Optimus Tom.
I'm below you in Skype, but I think I'm to your right on the stream.
You're to my left on stream. You are to my right. That's right.
Look at that.
Greg, Credible Mushroom.
Hello.
And this week, not Cereal Box, but Dom, a nom nom nom.
Good night, everybody.
Have a good one.
Bye-bye, guys.
Bye.